Hey everybody, Josh Neighbors here at Locked On Nationals podcast, May 9th, 2022. Our show today is with Matt Weyrich of NBC Sports Washington. He visits us as he does every single week. We discuss the series from the weekend. One quick note before we get going. Matt did have some connection issues, so this will be posted on YouTube in video form, but like you guys can't see us, which is totally fine. You know, we're not really doing anything anyway besides talking. Also, I did my best to cut out where his connection cuts out. Was not perfect with it, but did my best to piece some stuff together. Just a bad connection day on his end, which, it happens, and not a big deal at all, but did my best to catch as much of it as I could. So if you hear some static stuff, that's why. All right, static stuff, that's
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, hello everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Nationals podcast. I am Josh Neighbors. Joining us today, it is Matt Weyrich of NBC Sports Washington. Matt, appreciate your time as always. How are you, man?
Doing well, Josh. Thanks again for having me on.
Yes, so eventful weekend for the Nationals. They end their road trip, and they, right now, I always like to do this as we start the show. Right now, they are 10-20 overall, which puts them dead last, the National League East. They're 10 games behind the Mets. They've won 4 of their last 10, 7-9 away against their 3-11 home record. So I think that's kind of where to start. Like overall, they actually played, I think, pretty decent baseball for them on the road trip, right? They take 2 of 3 in their series against the Giants, which is a pretty good accomplishment. They have the 3 losses in a row, 2 to Colorado, and they win the first game against Colorado, I should say. Then they have the 2 losses back to back, and some, especially that last game was kind of compelling. And then they blow the lead in the final game, which would have given them actually an overall positive record. They would have been 5-4 in the 9-game road trip. They end up at 4-5, slim margins. And I think it's kind of the thing here is like that, when your team's not great, usually the better teams will pull them out on you more often than not. I think it's what we saw, losing back-to-back series and losing that final game too.
Yeah, they definitely played a good series, had a chance to beat the Angels and win the series on the final day going into the 9th inning. It looked like that was exactly what was going to happen. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way and kind of puts a sour ending to an otherwise, I would say overall positive road trip. I mean, the wins and losses aren't really what's important here.
Right.
It's about what we're seeing from the young guys on this team and the development they're showing. And, Josiah Gray turned in 2 quality starts on this road trip. We had Joan Adon look good on Friday night against the Angels. So, Keibert Ruiz is coming through in a big way defensively, also putting together some solid offensive performances. I think overall, those young pieces came out and showed out in a lot of ways. And I think there are a lot of positives to draw from it.
Yeah, and so let's work our way backwards. Yesterday's game ends. The Nats blow a 2-run lead in the 9th, which sucks. It's not great, but the upshot is this: is that inning that Tanner Rainey had, allows 3 runs. And look, I also, if we're gonna lose to anybody, I think the attitude has to be, if you're a Nats fan, Anthony Rendon beating you. Not a horrible way to go, right? Not the worst way to lose a game. It's good to see him, especially we know how much he struggled there. But the upshot for Tanner Rainey is like those are actually the first runs he's allowed, right? He's been really strong so far. And these things happen to closers. Like eventually it's going to happen. And so to him, it did. And he lost out to 2 really good hitters, especially, that did the damage, Ohtani and then Anthony Rendon. So I would say, yeah, not his best day, but he's had a lot of really good days for the Nationals in a new role after a bounce back year. So that's kind of the upshot, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Yeah, and Rainey had allowed all season, and as a result, also the first blown save of the season. Like you said, it's going to happen from time to time. Even the best closers are going to blow a few saves throughout a season. So, as long as he bounces back and continues to look like he did over his first 8 appearances. Yeah, on the last homestand, we saw Rainey load the bases with, I believe it was either no outs or 1 out. I think it was no outs, and work his way out of it. Him finally giving up those first runs of the year. He is able to move past it. I wouldn't worry about him long term.
Yeah, and then you mentioned starters, and I've grappled so much with this idea throughout the season of like, what is a good start, right? Because there's so much context when you ask what a good start is. All right, a good start for Max Scherzer and a good start for Erick Fedde are two totally different things, right? And also the context of a game matters too. And so, yesterday's start for Erick Fedde, I would say was a good one. There's no runs allowed through 5 innings, right? But the Nationals' big problem is depth. Like his start against Colorado was awesome because he goes 102 pitches and it gets him through 7 full innings. And so yesterday, it was a really strong start, no runs allowed, but he can't. 5 full is strong, right? Like they got to start extending some guys. And look, he's a guy that you're not going to protect like a Joan Adon, right? Erick Fedde's been around for a minute. So while it was a great start, no runs allowed, I would say like I think the idea of like what is a good start for each guy is different. And so I would say it was a good start, a strong start, but I like the Colorado start more, even though he allowed 1 run because he gave it more length. There's a lot of times the Nats are asking their guys to get 12 outs. Yes. As opposed to, 9 or 6.
Sure. Yeah. And, like you said, he's been around a while. You have higher expectations for him at this point in his career. But his big problem has been his inability to repeat, strong starts. You mentioned the Colorado outing where he went 7 innings, 1 run. It was a great performance for him. And that's, I think, when Fedde is at his best balls. So, for him in this weekend, it comes out and is ultimately undone by a lot of walks, long at bats. He had I believe a 20 pitch inning in the first inning and then a 26 third inning. That's going to prevent you from going very deep in the game. You got to be able to get out of at bats quicker. And, that's something that Davey Martinez has talked in the past about Fedde, and that he really nibbles around the strike zone. A ground ball pitcher that can be in a throw strikes when you're in 2 strike counts in order to try to put guys away. And ultimately Fedde can struggle with that, whether it's a confidence thing or a location issue. Not sure, but ultimately he's got to be able to make those pitches. So this next time out, I would just look for him to do the same. Try to replicate the ground balls, try to carry over his success. This was a solid outing, not a bad outing. Certainly when you give up no runs, you're going to be happy with that. But if he can be consistent and start to put together 2, 3, 4 outings like this in a row, I think the Nationals would certainly take it.
Yeah, and he's following, when you're in the rotation, you're following Gray and Adon. It's tough too because it's a spot where you'd like to get some more length just because typically they're protecting those guys a lot more, right? Whether it be their age, well, it's the combination of things, right? It's their age, plus I think especially on Adon's account, not as, he's 23 and he's trying to learn how to pitch in the majors.
And Gray has, long injury history from last year. They're not trying to, have that shoulder become a problem again. So they're definitely being a little bit cautious with him.
Right. And also he's got to learn how to get through a lineup a third time. Right. I mean, that's a huge learning process too, as guys learn you. So that's difficult, right? It's difficult, but overall, yeah, and now as a 5th starter, it's fine, right? If he's a 4th or 5th guy, and that's ultimately where he lands. But I think once again, this is not a criticism, but I think there is something to say. He walked 5 guys yesterday is what it ends up being. So yeah, there's a little bit of nibbling happening there, and maybe just needs to be a bit more efficient. But overall, right, good performance.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't be mad about the results of the outing. He put them in a position to win. It's really just, can he avoid the 7-run blow up the next time? That's always kind of how it is with Fedde. Whenever he seems to put together his best starts, it always seems to be followed by a clunker. So this was not a clunker, and I think should be seen as a positive sign. Now you just got to see if, he can continue that and make it as rather than just a 1-off, 2-off type deal.
And all right, let's talk about the game the Nationals won on the weekend. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Plenty of odds coming out right now, especially for the college football, for who's going to win their conferences. That's big. You guys can go check that out. Oh, by the way, Matt, when are you JMU Dukes due to make the jump to FBS? They're doing it, right?
It's this season. Yeah, this will be the first one in the Sun Belt. Let's go Dukes.
So you can go bet on them to win the Sun Belt. You guys can do that at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Also, you could have bet on whatever that horse's name was. Did you watch the Derby this weekend?
I did not watch the Derby. I was in Radford, my brother's college graduation. A lot was going on, so I unfortunately didn't get to watch. Did get to watch the Caps though, so that was good.
80-1 horse wins the Derby, so you could have bet on him there as well. Go to BetOnline and BetOnline.net today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, so Nationals had a couple losses. Well, they had 3 in a row, then the one win. But Josiah Gray, another decent start. 5 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs. They were earned. And then also 3 Ks as well. He goes 83 pitches. And then the bullpen was awesome. They were pretty much, C-check. Ramirez had a little bit of traffic, but handled it all pretty well. And then Rainey ends up getting the job done in the 9th. So this was another one of those strong starts, right? He puts them in position to win. Guess what hurt him, though? It was the long ball. Shocking, shocking, shocking. So what do you think has to change? Because once again, it's a good start. You put him in position to win. Once again, this is a guy who's pretty new to the majors, and this is kind of par for the course for him, I would say. But what do you think needs to change for him to avoid the long ball? Because it continues to hurt him, and obviously he knows it too.
For sure. I think that you can be successful in the major leagues as a fly ball hitter. And honestly, I think that the baseball has got to be helping him out right now in the fact that it seems to be less prone to flying far in ballparks. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. So that tells you he's getting fly balls, not turning into home runs at this point. So if he is going to be a fly ball pitcher, you would expect that strikeout total to be a little bit higher than maybe it's been the last couple of outings. That's something that he's working towards. But I think that overall, Max Scherzer showed that you can be a successful pitcher when you give up a lot of home runs, and he's definitely not the only pitcher in that regard to succeed while giving up a few long balls. It's whether or not they're hitting home runs on pitches that you're throwing a slider down and it drifts up towards the zone, or that just doesn't break. Those are the kind of home runs that you got to be afraid of. And I haven't really seen that from Josiah Gray so far. It's been more on challenge pitches. So I think that the home runs he's giving up right now are okay. It's just a matter of not letting them, become problematic.
And this was a game where the offense did get going and give him some support. So that was good to see. And then also, let's go to the Friday game. This one was a bit different for the Nationals. This is one of those losses where the offense kind of looked like the old Nationals offense. And, I would say that the offense was, I thought for the back part of the road trip, like pretty decent for the most part, right? This is one of those old Nats games where the offense did not show up. What did show up for the Nationals was Joan Adon. And so this kind of gets to our conversation earlier about context, right? About like what is a good start. I would say for Adon, 5 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs, 6 Ks, like there's stuff we can work with there, right? 6 Ks, like that shows you your stuff is kind of progressing and you can get guys out with it. With him, I think he's a real interesting case for the Nationals, right? Like at this point, if you had other options, this would not be a guy who's in your rotation, right? But he is showing signs of getting, semi-consistently getting major league hitters out with this stuff, via strikeout. So I find him to be a fascinating case for the Nats right now.
And you're going to throw the exact same pitch you struck him out last time, the best hitter in baseball. He's going to know what you threw him last time. He's going to be able to be ready for it. And when you throw the exact same pitch in the exact same location, probably going to have a different result. And that's exactly what happened. So other than that pitch, I thought Adon honestly had one of his better outings of the year. He has had, those clunkers where he's given up 6 or 7 runs. So like Fedde, we're going to be looking for more consistency out of him. But, that curveball, it's pretty nasty. Throwing it for strikes, especially. It's got great movement on it. Really changed from that sinker. I just would like to see him get that change up involved a bit more. He only throws it 8% of the time, right? Really throwing it for strikes. If he can carry off-speed pitch, especially for when his curveball isn't working, I think that could be a good weapon for him and really allow him to take a step forward as a starter.
And offensively, you mentioned Keibert Ruiz. Was there anything in particular that you liked overall from the road trip, or just any player you want to single out? I mean, I have to say, like you and I have talked about it though, but I hate the skeptic in me. I'm waiting for the Josh Bell drop off. It's just not coming. Like this is his year. And it feels like it always circles back to me for the should they have extended him, because the longer this goes, the more valuable he becomes. And if the Nationals want to keep a guy like that, look, once again, the sale is imminent. We know a sale could be coming, at least a part of the team. Not sure how that affects things, who wants to spend, who doesn't want to spend, whatever. But, he's just not slowing down. And so talk about Josh Bell and then anything else that you want to mention from the offense on the road trip.
Yeah, there are two factors that tell me that this Josh Bell offensive explosion is for real. Since June 1st of last season, so this is including when he was hitting well last year after getting a slow start, having COVID, not being able to train in facility, losing his timing, all those things. When he did start to heat up by June 1st of last year, since then, he has walked more than he struck out, which is not something that we had seen from Josh Bell even back in 2019 when he had that career year for the Pirates. That is a new development and something that I think shows that of him taking step forwards in his approach. And the other thing being that his lefty-righty splits are really not all that far apart. Traditionally, he's hit much better from the left side than he has the right. He does have all of his home runs as a left-handed hitter this year, but he's still hitting for very high average, getting a high OBP from the right side. And I think that just shows you how locked in he is from both sides of the plate in a way that we really haven't seen from Josh Bell before. So, between him hitting well from both sides and really not striking out as much as he usually does, that tells me that this Josh Bell has turned a corner, and he is showing that he is at least a top 10 first baseman in baseball. And I think making a push for the conversation of top 5 as we get closer to All-Star game ballots being opened, in the not so distant future, I think he's got to be in the conversation for first base in the National League along with Eric Hosmer.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say actually this statement would be crazy. If you told me before the year started that like Josh Bell would have a much clearer cut, better All-Star case than Juan Soto, I would have been like, wow, I mean, that's better than, what 2019 Josh Bell was. Like that's so, I guess it would have been a crazy thing to say, right? Like that statement would have been shocking to you too, correct?
Yeah, I mean, coming into the year, honestly, I was pretty high on Bell. I felt like that he did really come, like everybody just had a tainted view of him because of those first 2 months of the season last year, and deservedly so. It was a really bad 2 months of the season, but
before, like in spring training, because I remember
he was locked in spring training last year,
right? And he was great last year, and then he had to join the team. I think they were in St. Louis maybe or something like that, and that's when he showed up, and so it completely threw his rhythm off. I forgot if he had COVID or not, though.
Isolate for 10 days, and that was really the big thing. Going the cage, he wasn't taking pitches, he wasn't staying locked in, and really affected him. He's a guy who for a long time has really have developed a reputation for constantly tweaking his swing, like depending on how he's feeling on either side. He's moving his hands up, moving his leg, whatever. He's making adjustments on the fly a lot throughout the season. It's not just one swing that he's trying to repeat the entire year. So, for a guy who's constantly messing with things, and it depends on his feel, when he comes in after, basically being locked in a hotel room for 10 days, that's going to, really affect his timing. And it took him, longer than he probably would have liked to get locked in. But once he did, he really started hitting like one of the better hitters in baseball. All
right, Matt, what are you working on right now that you want to tell the folks about?
I don't have anything in the queue at the moment, but I am preparing to go to the ballpark a couple times this week. They got a series with the Mets. So Max Scherzer, I believe, is going to be pitching in this series. So that's always something to be. Actually, is he pitching? Because he pitched yesterday. He might actually.
He pitched on. Well, it's right because he got bumped back due to the weather.
So because of that, actually, he won't. We won't see him. But the Mets are playing really good baseball, so that's going to be great. And then we have the Astros coming into town Friday through Sunday, so I'm definitely going to be there for some of that series as Dusty Baker makes his return to Washington, and then have to play Houston for the first time since the World Series. So
a lot of storylines
galore. Yeah, it'll be great.
One more quick word from our sponsors on today's show. Today's Locked On Nationals podcast is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to Built.com today. That's Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. What they've got going right now, flavors I'm sure you all will enjoy. Just a few here: banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. And they're always releasing new flavors as well. Built Bars, most of them have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar and 4 net carbs, as well as 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar that's got around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So go to built.com today. That's built.com, promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com today. All right, Matt, where can people find you and your work and all of its variety?
Yeah, you can check me out on Twitter over at @MattWeyrich or on NBCSportsWashington.com for all of my written work.
Matt Weyrich, NBC Sports Washington, thank you so much for your time.
No problem, Josh. Thanks for having me.